President Trump has just announced reciprocal tariffs as global criticism grows. Some say Trump's move is bold, while others fear that it could crash the economy. The question is this strategy worth the risk? This and many more will be detailed in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Since Trump hit the White House, a lingering question has been in the air. Are Trump's tariffs pushing the world towards economic chaos or not? Well, world leaders, including some of America's closest allies, are condemning President Donald Trump's announcement of sweeping reciprocal tariffs. As countries scramble to respond, many are questioning whether these tariffs will trigger a global economic crisis or whether Trump's strategy will strengthen the United States' leverage in international trade. Is the world on the brink of a new trade war? And what are the potential long-term impacts on global markets? Countries like China, Japan, South Korea have expressed strong disapproval, including members of the European Union, with some pledging countermeasures while hoping the White House might still be open to negotiations. China in particular has urged the United States to immediately cancel its latest tariffs, warning that it would take necessary steps to protect its interests. Beijing fears that these escalating trade conflict could severely disrupt global supply chain, potentially plunging the world's largest economies into deeper turmoil. Now, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, reflecting the concerns of many United States allies, stated, "This is not the act of a friend." Australia, often seen as America's key ally in Asia, views the tariffs as illogical and harmful to bilateral partnerships. Japan's Trade Minister Yoji Muto echoed this sentiment, emphasizing that Japan must weigh its options cautiously while still considering bold and rapid responses. How should America's allies navigate these challenging situations? By pushing back or seeking compromise? Well, President Trump announced a 10% baseline tariffs on all United States imports with higher rates for dozens of countries. Among America's closest allies, Japan faces a 24% tariff, South Korea faces a 25% tariff, and Taiwan facing a 32% tariff. Now we see that countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, and Saudi Arabia, and even much of South America will see the minimum 10% rate. Well, China, however, has been hit the hardest, facing a combined 54% tariff after previous increases. Now take a look at this video of Donald Trump talking about tariffs.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal, that means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple, can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our Declaration of Economic Independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense. but now it's our turn to prosper, and in so doing use trillions and trillions of dollars to reduce our taxes and pay down our national debt, and it'll all happen very quickly. With today's action, we are finally going to be able to make America great again, greater than ever before. So, if you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here, we didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing.
Well, we can only hope that that is for the best. That is all we can hope. Meanwhile, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen warned of dire consequences for millions of people around the world and pledged that the European Union is preparing countermeasures to safeguard its interests. Similarly, South Korea and Taiwan have voiced their objections, with some leaders pushing for diplomatic dialogue to resolve the issue. Despite the outrage, von der Leyen acknowledged that the global trading system does have serious deficiencies, aligning partially with Donald Trump's critiques while opposing his method. Now, in contrast, Trump's decision not to impose the new global tariff rate on top trading partner Canada and Mexico reflects a strategic calculus tied to ongoing border control and fentanyl trafficking issues. The United States continues to maintain up to 25% tariffs on many Canadian and Mexican goods under previous orders. Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, vowed to protect Canadian workers who have asserted the country will fight back with countermeasures while strengthening its G7 economy. Now, Mexico, however, has chosen a more reserved approach, with President Claudia Sheinbaum announcing a comprehensive program rather than retaliatory tariffs. Brazil, facing the 10% tariff, is also exploring all possible avenues, including bringing the matter to the World Trade Organization. As countries brace for economic fallout, global markets are likely to react with volatility, with analysts warning of potential disruptions in supply chains and increased production costs. Trump supporters argue that these measures will bring jobs back to America and reduce dependency on foreign goods. But critics worry that the tariffs will ultimately hurt American consumers and businesses. We're still wondering, is Trump's trade policy a bold move to revitalize domestic manufacturing, or a reckless strategy that risks alienating key allies and partners? Well, as the world watches and waits, the economic future remains uncertain. Well, we see that in Hungary, the ICC withdrawal amid Netanyahu visit. We're wondering if it's political solidarity superseding international justice. We've seen in Hungary, as it announced its decision to withdraw from the International Criminal Court, the ICC, just as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is also wanted under an ICC arrest warrant, arrived in the country for a state visit. Now, this move comes after the ICC issued a warrant against Netanyahu over alleged war crimes in Gaza, following Israel's military response to a Hamas-led attack on southern Israel, as Hungary takes a step back from the ICC's jurisdiction. The global community is left questioning, is Hungary's decision a stance against perceived political bias or a compromise of international accountability? Very dicey there to decide. While the right-wing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, known for his close ties with Netanyahu, extended the invitation to the Israeli leader despite the ICC's arrest warrant. Israel has consistently rejected the accusations as politically motivated and rooted in anti-Semitism. Now, arguing with the ICC undermines its right to self-defense by targeting a democratically elected leader. Although Hungary is a founding member of the ICC and, in theory, obligated to arrest anyone with an outstanding warrant, Orban made it clear that his government would not comply. He described the ICC's ruling as brazen, cynical, and completely unacceptable. Hungary signed the ICC's founding Rome Statute in 1999 and ratified it in 2001, but the law has never been incorporated into Hungarian legal codes. According to Gergely Golyas, Orban's chief of staff, the absence of domestic legislation means ICC measures cannot be enforced in Hungary. Orban's stance is not entirely new. In February, he questioned Hungary's continued participation in the ICC after the United States President Donald Trump sanctioned the ICC prosecutor, Karin Khan, on social media. We saw that on social media, Orban remarked, "It's time for Hungary to review what we're doing in an international organization that is under the United States sanctions." The Dutch government, however, stressed that Hungary remains obligated to fulfill the ICC duties, its ICC duties, particularly under the withdrawal process, which takes about a year to complete. As Hungary moves towards formalizing its exit, the question remains, does Orban's position reflect a broader rejection of international legal norms, or is it primarily an act of political solidarity with Netanyahu? Yet again, difficult to decide. While Netanyahu's relationship with Orban has been characterized by mutual political support, with Hungary often blocking the European Union statement critical of Israel. The recent ICC warrant alleges that Netanyahu and his former defense chief are criminally responsible for acts involving and including murder and using starvation as a weapon of war, targeting Gaza's civilian population. The Gaza conflict has resulted in over 50,000 Palestinian deaths, according to Palestinian health authorities, while the Hamas-led attacks on Israel in October 2023 left 1,200 Israelis dead and over 250 taken as hostages. In a parallel development, the ICC also issued a warrant for a Hamas leader in November, but his death was confirmed shortly after. Given the complex web of political alliances and legal obligations, observers are left contemplating, is Hungary's exit from the ICC a strategic move to reinforce national sovereignty, or does it signify an erosion of the commitment to international human rights and justice? Well, away from the ICC and the war in Gaza, we see Israel yet again intensifying its airstrike on Syria, framing the attacks as a warning to the new Islamist rulers in Damascus on Thursday. Israeli officials also accused Turkey, an ally of the new Syrian leadership, of seeking to transform Syria into a Turkish protectorate. As airstrike targets strategic locations such as air bases and sites near Damascus, the focus shifts to Israel's growing concerns about the Islamists who deposed Bashar al-Assad in December. With Israel viewing the new leadership as a potential threat, the international community is left questioning, are these aggressive actions necessary for Israel's security, or do they risk further destabilizing the region? The Israeli military reported that overnight strikes focused on air bases, a location near Damascus and the southwestern region. This development highlights Israel's apprehension about a new regional order under Islamist rule, which is perceived as a direct challenge to its borders. Israeli forces have secured grounds in the southwest after Assad's fall, reported killing several militants who allegedly opened fire on Israeli troops. Meanwhile, Syria's state news agency, the Sana, claimed that Israeli shell had resulted in 9 fatalities. Now, in a stern statement, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz asserted that the airstrike served as a clear message and warning for the future. He vowed that Israel would not compromise on security, emphasizing that Israeli forces would continue to occupy buffer zones within Syria and actively counter any perceived threats. Katz cautioned that the Syrian government would face severe consequences if it allowed hostile forces to challenge Israeli scrutiny, reflecting Israel's fears of growing Turkish influence in post-Assad Syria. Foreign Minister Gideon Saar accused Turkey of pursuing a negative role in Syria, Lebanon, and beyond. They are doing their utmost to have Syria as a Turkish protectorate. It is clear that is their intention. He stated this during a press conference in Paris. However, should the international community view Turkey's increasing involvement in Syria an attempt to stabilize the region or a bid for regional dominance is still in the question. Syria's foreign minister and the ministry in general condemned the airstrike as an unwarranted escalation intended to destabilize the country, calling on global powers to pressure Israel to cease its military operations. Israel, however, has frequently targeted Syria even before Assad's downfall, citing the presence of Iranian forces as a primary threat. The latest strikes among the most extensive since Assad's ouster, saw Israel hit 5 locations within 30 minutes, including the near total destruction of Hamas air base, leaving dozens wounded. Now, the Israeli military claimed the raids targeted residual military capabilities in Hama and Homs provinces, as well as infrastructure in Damascus, where a scientific research facility was reportedly struck. A Syrian military source revealed that Hama's military airport was virtually obliterated, including runways, the towers, arms depots, and hangars. Israel also confirmed hitting the T4 air base in Homs, a location it has targeted repeatedly in the past week. In southern Syria's Tasil area, Israeli forces reportedly engaged and neutralized several militants while seizing weapons and dismantling what it described as terrorist infrastructure. No Israeli casualties were reported. The military maintained that the presence of weapon stockpiles in southern Syria pose a direct threat to Israel's security, and it will continue to eliminate perceived military dangers. Now, coming to the climate of this afternoon's Flash News, we see the report with regional tensions running high, global observers left in the debate. Is Israel's assertive stance a necessary measure for self-defense, or does it risk exacerbating an already volatile situation in the Middle East? Well, until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtains on today's Flash News. Remember, we'll be bringing you recent happenings from the home front, detailing, and many more at the top of the hour at 8 p.m. Until then, to have a pleasant day and stay safe.